Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Proving Grounds. We've got a fantastic show today, but I am Cajun the Rage. Joining me is the ever-ravishing Deserux and Ravishing Ravish, all the way on the right. That's right. Got it all backwards. Boys, we got some League of Legends today.
Got some League of Legends indeed. We're finally towards the phase, Sam. Big one. Best of fives are just around the corner.
Indeed they are, Desi Westy, but as you just mentioned, as you've already just stole my title, I might as well steal something of yours. So I too, in solidarity, will also just shave all the rest of the hair that I have left so we can be equally and finally as one. But like you mentioned, yeah, fantastic game today. It's BO5 in front of us with like two academy teams that honestly have surprised and really impressed us both.
It really has been just back and forth throughout this tournament. I mean, we look at the summer season, and you have to feel like these are not the two teams we saw getting this far into the tournament. We've got Dignitas Academy versus Immortals Academy facing off in round 4 of the lower bracket.
You know, I do like that you said that, because these very much feel different from what we saw throughout the year. I think 2021 has been a wild year for Academy and Amateur with all the swaps we've been seeing with rosters, not just on the Amateur level and Academy level, but also on the LCS level and Academy level. There's been a lot of shuffling going around, but now a lot of these rosters are starting to finalize, starting to look good. They're starting to really nail down what it is they're good at, how they need to focus out these games in order to get farther and farther through the Proving Grounds.
Yeah, that's just the biggest thing, right? And I find even yesterday while I was talking about it, while looking at the games, the Proving Grounds buff for some of these teams has been very, very real. Like ever since like whatever they covered in this tournament, like they've looked like a whole new roster. Some of the things we were to pull off has been phenomenal to see. And one of those teams we'll actually end up seeing today, that would be Dignitas Academy, who've looked absolutely unstoppable except that one game against TL, but like they've looked phenomenal nonetheless.
I mean, we do have to take a look at how we got here via the bracket, because honestly, these two teams have played quite a bit of League of Legends. So looking at the Proving Grounds bracket thus far, I believe this is the lower bracket. Yep. So just going through that, I mean, Immortals Academy have had to fight their way for so long, it feels like. And Dignitas Academy, even though they did lose to Team Liquid, as we saw earlier this week, they still played a phenomenal series.
And they've been playing phenomenal games throughout this entire bracket. You know, 2-0s, 2-0s. The only time that momentum gets stopped is against Team Liquid. And keep in mind, Team Liquid are the newly crowned champs of Academy. So there's no shame in taking a loss there, or taking a game even. They're looking good.
Honestly, I would say they're looking great, but on the other end here, Destructs, we do of course have Immortals Academy, who have been completing this phenomenal lower bracket run ever since round 1 of unfortunately falling to that being Team Liquid, right? Sorry, to fall to Dignitas, I should say. And they've gotten all the way up to this point with looking better and better every single week. So today we get the salty run back from what happened in round 1.
It will be a match of the Titans between Dignitas and Immortals Academy today. Tomorrow, Wildcard Red and GGA going to be pretty good, but we got to talk about today's game between these two amazing rosters. And I got to ask you two, what has been the real shock of seeing these two rosters this far in the tournament?
What's the shock to me is the evolution we've been seeing of Dignitas thus far. Because Dignitas is a team, when you look very earlier on, towards the end of the spring split, the start of the summer, it didn't look good for them. You know, a lot of bottom 9 finishes to really start rounding it out. But Will comes in suddenly out of nowhere in the summer. You know, the first time he actually gets into the Dignitas facility is sometime mid-July, mid-August. So he is a relatively new part, but he's part of their success. That's only one part, though. You got to look at the other end. Saligo in the mid lane, 11.14. It didn't look so good for him because the champion pools didn't really match. Lucian, Viego, Aurelia, Renekton, these are all champions that were prominent during that patch. 11.15 comes Ryze, LeBlanc, Syndra. This is exactly in his wheelhouse. He's a very active mid laner, has a very high first blood rate. And ever since those two things happened, both the shift over in the mid lane towards mages and including Will into the roster of Dignitas, last 26 games, Dignitas have won 20 of them. They look like a brand new machine.
You know what, Destructs, I take your point. I'd raise nothing. On the other end, for Immortals Academy, it's like, although they came in as a higher seed over Dig, having a pretty solid overall, academy run, though, I would say coming into this, I thought people will view them as very much as overall as an average team, not thinking a ton of them. But with the run they've been able to make after pulling loser back in round one, taking out some titans such as EGA, taking out Zeus as well, and now taking out Resolve just yesterday. Like team after team after team have gone up against Immortals, thinking this will be fine, and then they've had to face the wrath of some of the phenomenal roster, being the very fierce and top side with Viper and Onda. And by the way, you talking about that mid lane on Dig, but I'm thinking, mid lane on Immortals, but I would say pretty gosh darn good in my opinion, considering he too excels on those champions like any control mages, like the Rise, the LeBlanc, but his Victor Destructs has also been one to definitely be terrified of. We all know what Victors can do. Shutter double if one time.
No, I completely agree with you, Ravish. I mean, there's so much experience on this roster. Anda and Viper, they were both hyped up when they were swiped from No Org to go into Immortals. The performance, though, hasn't been exactly what Immortals wanted. It has bumped them up in performance, but you're still trying to find that synergy. Pretty is another player that I look at that you just talked about. He's the first two-time Iberian Cup winner, first Greek player in the LCS and Academy. He is a great player. He's an experienced player. He's ran around that European scene for quite some time now, so I completely agree with you. There is a lot of strengths on Immortals, especially when you start looking at the top side of the map, but what brings my attention is going to be the bot side of the map for Immortals, because we haven't seen as much performance there when it comes to Keith, when it comes to Joey. It's been very, I hate to say it, but more feast or famine for Leith. He has the most stats out of any other marksman when it comes to the Proving Grounds. To be fair, he's also playing the most games. He commits to fights. He will fight things out all the way to the death, but he's still not looking too good in that KDA. We still need to see more positioning if Immortals are going to be able to take a boom here and win the run back.
And winning that run back is just going to be so difficult, right? Ravish, though, I want to hear what you got.
I mean, you know what, man? Like, that's just talking about being a KDA player, which I don't know if anybody is here, because I know I sure as heck am not a KDA player when I play League of Legends. But, like, when it comes down to, like, Keith and if we're looking at bot sides, definitely, yeah. It's like, overall performance has definitely been a little bit back and forth if we're looking at just what he's been able to do. But I want to take a look back on just what we saw yesterday, right? It was essentially just a battle of the top side, and Keith being kind of left on his own island, which I don't think necessarily will happen today, in my opinion. Because if you look at Spawn, we're looking at JJ, both these guys like to get active, and Will, likes to give these resources to his bot side too. So I'm thinking we should see a little bit of diversity in both these compositions, and the focuses on the map that will go down today.
It's definitely going to be around the map, and I got to ask you both, what is the matchup that you're most looking forward to between these two teams? You talk about the bot lane Desterux as being a little disappointing for Immortals. What's going to be the closest matchup that you can imagine?
I'm excited for the mid lane, and it's a lot of the reasons that was said earlier, including for myself and Ravish, just the control mages. The mages are back. We're back on the rise of them, and a lot of rise being picked between both of these two mid laners. And they have a lot to prove. Over with Saligo, he had his time with 100 Thieves Academy. They did a lot of flopping when it came to their LCS roster. He got a lot of flack during that time. Now he's up on the rise. He's looking good once again. The patch is working great for him. And same exact thing across the rift when it does come to Pretty. When it comes to the other side of the pond and his grind that he's done with the European scene, it's looked great. He's had plenty standout performances, and now being in NA, being in the Academy scene, he's the second best KDA for mid laners right now, and a lot of that comes from assist and team play. Both of these mid laners like to leave their lanes, so I'm excited to see what happens when we do hit the rift with these two squads.
That's just like you mentioned, with mid lanes being so important too, what's going to come down to for me, we're talking about splitting our resources, and the matchup that can really decide that is going to be between Will and Onda, right? We're talking about what kind and such a force Will has been on Dignitas, since coming onto the scene. This 16-year-old prodigy who we gotta make sure gets here on time after school, and he gets ready to absolutely tear apart the rift after turning apart his studies. I think is one thing that is phenomenal to see. But Onda, though, as well. Look at yesterday is just to getting Leeson. All three of these games are going to be one pick definitely watch out for. So how these two junglers are going to be able to affect the map is definitely going to be really interesting. And we might even get some early scrappy duels, which I know neither of these teams is really opposed to.
Well, what I'm excited about, boys, is that we are getting into Champ Select very, very soon. Just before we get there, though, what are your predictions for this series? Very quickly.
I think it's going to be a close one. We saw what happened when it came to the first time these two teams showed down. It was a 2-0 sweep, but it was a war between these two teams, so I'm going to say 3-1 Dignitas.
Hey, real quick, 3-1 Immortals, done. There you go.
All right. Controversial opinions on this desk. We'll see how it plays out, but for now, we've got Latigris and Joshi waiting for us to take us into Champ Select.
Thank you so much, Cage. A diversity in predictions there from our analysts, and we're about to get into Champ Select for game number 1 between Dignitas Academy and Immortals Academy. I am joined by Joshi. So happy to be on the mic with you again. How stoked are you for today's best of 5?
It's been too long since we've done this together, Gabby. I'm looking forward to it. We have a lot of strong talent coming through, and I'm kind of leaning towards Destructs right now, right? Last time we saw these two teams go head-to-head, Dignitas were able to come out on top, and Immortals have a tall task ahead of them in order to try and win in a best-of-5 situation.
Yeah, it all comes down to what kind of form they feel in today compared to when they started off in the bracket. And in his last post-game interview, talking about how they feel that they've leveled up and can maybe shore up some of the inconsistencies that they had in the first series. But here's Champ Select, game number 1, baby. We've got Aurelia and TF put onto the ban block.
Not a big surprise coming through. The Rise is a little bit more surprising since we have been talking about how much Soligo has been enjoying the switch back to all the mages that we've been watching. But I also want to focus in a little bit on the top lane, right? Because it is going to be a kind of tough lane for Lorlo to pilot. A lot of the champions that we know he has a lot of experience on, like the Gnar and the Ornn, can really be punished by what Viper likes to play. He plays a lot of ranged champions that can really push him around, and the Irelia is like the one thing that you have to take off the table in order for Lorlo to even feel comfortable bringing the Gnar out at all.
Yeah, and just the way that both of these teams play around that top lane in terms of the draft, because we've seen a lot of times Immortals trying to prioritize getting Viper on something that he's comfortable in the counter, whereas Lorlo, as a leader of this team currently, willing to go in blind. And even here in Proving Grounds, when comparing to the regular season of Academy, has shifted towards those Camille's, even brought out an Akshan, and we haven't seen as much of the Gnar and of the Ornn that he always keeps in that pocket. But as usual, Lee Sin is the priority, Will having some very prominent series on the pick.
Now, this is going to be a bit of an interesting read, right? Because most of the time when we see these two teams go head-to-head, they've done all their scouting, they have good ideas of what the other team is likely to ban. You tend to see first picks, the blue ones, coming out rather quickly. I'm a little bit surprised that Dignitas took almost all of their 30 seconds to decide on this Lee Sin, which, props to Immortals Academy's coach, Jensen Go. I feel like he's already starting to throw them a little bit of these curveballs, and very naturally, they're very quick on what they want to do. They say, oh, you're going to leave it up? We're going to pick Aphelios and Thresh, two very strong bot laners that are very happy to continue scaling into the game.
And the Thresh often gets banned against Joey, so when it's up after this initial phase, it makes sense for him to grab that. They have the security in the bot lane. Aphelios, I believe, 5 games up to this point that Keith has had on the pick throughout Proving Grounds thus far. And then in response, JJ loving the Braum, not just in Proving Grounds, but UGP as well. So obviously providing that level of engage, but really that sturdy figure that you want to keep everybody else safe.
There's also a lot of cheeky level 1s that both these teams can go for with the Thresh and the Braum, so keep an eye out for that. If we start seeing some late invades, it wouldn't be particularly surprising, but Spawn going with the kind of early Jinx pick at this point, I'm a little bit surprised. There's a lot of tools, and hey, Viper says you're going to pick an immobile AD carry, we're going to pick something that can jump right on top of it, and Braum and Lee Sin can do their best to keep this alive, but it's already a tall task that Dignitas have picked for themselves, and we'll need to see how Soligo and Lorlo are ready to do their part to keep them alive.
Yeah, you do always have to worry about exactly that, Joshi, that immobility that Jinx has, despite the ability to be a hyper carry and such a strong service for the team. But if she ain't around, she can't do nothing about it. All the same difference. But meanwhile, on the other side, Camille, comfort pick for both of these top laners. Just a lot of versatility in the way that she can play on the map, whether you're going for split pushing, having that security in her own lane, especially when you have someone willing to roam up to her. Hint, hint, something that is very prominent on both of these sides. So pretty comfortable in that as we continue through the second ban phase. Gnar and Renekton both targeted at Lorlo here.
I'm liking this quite a bit. Remember, we are still in 11-17. Renekton has not taken the nerf to his W yet, so he is still very strong in the competitive scene at this point in time. Now we're going to be seeing Lorlo pushed off to something that tends to be a little bit more tanky. Historically, in these kind of positions, we're seeing him pick something like the Ornn, and since they already have the Braum on their side, they don't have to worry about Joey, putting that up and preventing the Ornn's ultimate from actually coming through. They're banning away a couple of these tank engaged supports because they know as long as there aren't ways for Anda to help out with Pretty and Viper, like going in for these dives, it's a lot easier to keep Spawn alive. So Immortals have a lot of things that they have to decide, right? Because they do have these very disparate styles. You have a Felix who wants to stand very far back, Camilla wants to go very far forward. Now they kind of have to patch in the holes. They think Trundle's the answer, and Trundle can definitely split either way if they want to go forward or backward.
Yeah, and especially when you're looking at that early game to try and cater towards the lanes that might be a bit more vulnerable, you have somebody that can execute very effectively, catching somebody out in the jungle or otherwise. And on the side of Dignitas Academy, yeah, you have so much damage in that hyper carry already anyway. If you can find some way with some of your other lanes to keep that safe in the top laner, that's not where they are prioritizing a pick just yet, though. So it's going to be the Syndra locked in here for Sligo.
We like this, very standard stuff coming through. We know Sligo has been a big fan of the return of Syndra, and I do like this. Whenever you have a Jinx, you want one burst so that you can burst somebody down, get the passive going very quickly, and two, somebody that can help peel. You just stand alongside each other, you knock everybody away, and it makes it very easier for both of these carries to stay alive for long periods of time. The Shen is going to be the answer right now up in the top lane, always very strong in lane, and also provides a lot of tools to keep Spawn and Sligo alive. The one criticism I have towards Dignitas Academy's roster so far, they don't have a ton of say over when fights actually get started. You're really just looking at Braum's Glacial Fissure and big kicks coming up from Will. We know they're up to the task, but it just makes their life a little bit harder.
Yeah, but at least if something is initiated from the opposite side, having that stand united to be able to have a reactive play, it also gives Lorlo just that extra mobility across the map as a response. So he can be that effective force for the team, even if he's not in that carry position. As far as the comps go, though, it's all locked in. Standard matchup in the mid lane as Orianna is the last pick for Immortals Academy. Joshi, how are you feeling about how it's all shaken out in game one?
Well, the criticism I just had towards Dignitas, I feel, is also kind of true of Immortals Academy. They are a little bit more proactive because Emil, I always call her kind of like a Pokemon, right? You just throw her at the enemy team, and now you have the Pokeball from Pretty right on top of it to back it up. So they have a little bit more say over when these fights actually get started, but it's so touch and go between these two rosters. I feel like it's going to be a bit of a wash whenever they go head-to-head, and it's really going to depend on who's actually able to get setups, who's able to play with the geography, and who can force the enemy team to check into them.
A lot of ultimates here that can change the tide, whether you're looking over on Immortals Academy and Orianna throwing in a shockwave or something like Lorlo with the Stand United. But it's all about, hey, making use as much as possible and not whiffing it and making yourself vulnerable for the rest of the time. But I'm so excited. We're officially in best of 5 territory. One thing that we didn't talk about much, Joshi, is just how going from best of 3s to best of 5 can really alter the outcome within a series because of that variation that comes game by game and that learning that the teams go through.
There's a lot of adaptation that you always have to have in these long periods, and we also have to look at which teams have the veterancy, which teams are actually able to play for long periods of time, because we've been watching a lot of players like Lorlo and Viper and Sligo. We've seen all these guys play for such a long time, but we're already seeing them come out on the Rift with a little bit of vigor, but JJ gets spotted out, and it does mean that anything that Dignitas Academy were looking to do before the minute mark is going to be stuffed out, and they're going to have to potentially look at maybe a late invade if they still want to be spicy.
Moving as a unit there, we've seen a couple of those aggressive starts from some of these teams, sometimes just to get some vision down or a potential pick. But as a result, that's why Immortals Academy are able to get that deeper ward into the blue side jungle. But we're kicking things off here. Game number 1 between these two teams. Remember, we are in the lower bracket, so whichever team loses this best of 5 here today is officially eliminated from Proving Grounds. And considering all that these teams have to prove, Joshi, Dignitas proving they are more than their 11th seed, Immortals wanting to prove that they are the top of the pack, all of that's on the line here today.
I feel like Dignitas have already done a great job at showing that they are a team that you can't really underestimate. We weren't particularly excited about their regular season Academy performance, but as the analyst desk already pointed out, over the last 26 games, they've won 20 of them. That's a lot, right? It is very difficult to say that these guys have underperformed thus far. And now we are seeing both junglers actually going to be starting leashless, and they're both starting the top side, which means we're potentially looking at scuffles around the 3-minute mark in the bottom lane. And Jinx typically is going to be getting a little bit of a push with the Rocket, but right now is kind of being pushed back by the double range of Keith and Joey. So we're going to be paying a lot of attention to how these junglers are going to be pathing down there and where the lane state's going to be when Trundle and Lee Sin are in the bottom side.
How we start things off with the junglers towards that lane, and then how the supports decide to respond. But a bit of some trades. Oh, yeah. Where is he coming through? Over on the backside, trying to go for the flank. A flash forward from Joey gets the play of Spawn. Already burning down with the Ignite. Anda is here to get the cutoff onto JJ, but he is a tanky boy indeed. Had the flash to get out, but the pillar to block him off. A little bit of safety from the turret and forces the flash onto Anda. So only 1 kill acquired in this case, but it is first blood, baby. And we're off to a spicy start.
It's only 1 camp taken from Anda at the beginning. He ran from topside red buff all the way bottom lane. And Will's responding to this already. He cleared out his topside, and now he's trying to find Anda at his own buff.
Oh my goodness, are they going to be able to follow up and punish? Anda's already marked so low while going for this blue blood. Jay and Will have him in their crosshairs. Goes for the smite for the heal. Can't get over the wall though. Will goes in. Joey on the back of JJ to see if he can offer some semblance of support, but cannot do so. The return kill has been achieved.
Joey's going to have to keep on running. It looks like he's got nothing left to do.
No
flash near Spawn.
Yeah, flays away JJ, but Spawn's got the autos. He is an 80 carry after all. Secures a second kill.
So, while this was overall kind of decent for Immortals Academy, right? We do see Keith picking up the first kill. It ends up being this huge disaster because Anda comes down. He only has 1 camp. He clears a second camp after coming here, but notice he doesn't actually even get an assist on this kill. This is just Keith picking this up with the help of his support. The only thing that changed was that they had the confidence to do it because their Trundle was actually there, but Trundle is now really far behind this Lee Sin. He's down a kill, he's down several camps, and we know how effective Will can be on this map. So I'm suddenly expecting Dignitas Academy very happy with their situation, and even though Lorlo was pushed under his turret, it's not going to matter. He's going to be able to get most of this CS underneath the turret, even up all the experience differential with Viper, and suddenly, as this pushes out, in about a minute and a half, we're potentially looking at a dive top lane as Dignitas just wins across the map.
And when looking at when Dignitas has been most successful in the past, in their win in the series they had against Team Liquid Academy, for instance, it was when they knew TLA was pushing those resources towards mid, and they punished on other portions of the map. So knowing here that play that happened with Anda making that sacrifice and moving around, they responded effectively, but it's a 3v2 potentially as Will hovering on the outside of the tri-bush. Lantern goes out to grab Keith and bring him to safety, but a stun on the follow-up. Flash forward. Will goes in. Joey burned down. Another shot should do it. JJ gets the credit for the kill, but it's Dignitas out on top.
Man, we were just saying that we were expecting this top game to be really focused around what Lorlo and Viper were doing, but instead we're seeing a whole lot of action towards the bottom side as both junglers committing a lot of time down here. It feels like Immortals were expecting Will to be on the top side of the map. That's why they were willing to clear this ward, but instead he's just right there waiting in the wings. And again, we just see this crash coming up in the top side, so Lorlo is going to be in a slightly awkward spot, but Anda's not even here. We're seeing Will come up to potentially cover the gank, but it just feels like they're reading one step ahead every single time as Dignitas comes again out with a small lead.
So when that prep works against you, Dignitas kind of saving and hiding their cards to make that switch in strategy at the top of the series to get IMT on some uneven footing at this point. And as you can see on the map, the pings coming through. That first Drake already spawns and already being targeted by Immortals, hoping to get some kind of solace out of the loss in kills and secure the first objective. A slight rotation from JJ over within their jungle here, but Pretty is there to get him at the cutoff.
I do really like this coming out from Immortals, right? Typically, you'll see Dragons being traded for Rift Heralds later on in the game, but they're just a little bit faster to the punch. They're able to pick that up, and so if they want to, they can try and contest the top side of the map for Rift Herald if they want, if Joey is able to rotate a little bit faster. But look at how much attention is being paid bottom side. They can't rotate Joey out whatsoever, because Will still just hovering down here. They know they have Shen with level 6, so they can look to even go for dives more aggressively soon.
Both JJ and Joey has shown so much strength when they have that openness to be able to roam across the map, and rather than just trying to match the opponent's roam, in this case, Dignitas just suppressing him and trying to lock him there as much as possible. But the bot lane's actually rotating towards another portion of the map right now after that back to try and catch Dig, maybe in a moment of uncertainty of where they could be, with the wards not quite extended into enemy territory yet, as we are fairly early in the game. And a lot of a collection of Immortals around that mid side towards that Herald side, as Viper pushes Lorlo in a bit.
It's a little bit early to be moving the bot lane up. This says to me that they're looking for a dive. Joey already trying to make sure that there's no vision here. Viper's level 6, and look at this. All 4 members of Immortals are lining up. There's no teleport from Saligo. This should be an easy dive.
Dignitas are aware that there's something funky in the water, but they don't have the vision to know the specifics. So Lorlo has to hug the tower. Viper right on his pursuit. It's a 4v1. Comes down with a Hextech ultimatum, and you don't need nothing else, baby. Dignitas' top laner falls at the hand of Immortals.
And that's great. It's coming up about 30 seconds before the Rift Herald comes through. The timing from Immortals is immaculate. This is one of those practice things that teams really start drilling over and over again. Lorlo, with no teleport, can't really get here. He will be a little bit late, and as Keith and Joey are able to pick up a plate or two top side, they teleport Viper to the other side, and as long as they play this correctly, they can probably relay it into this upcoming Rift Herald. But it doesn't even look like Immortals are looking to do that. Instead, they're just happy with the kill. They're happy that they've created counterplay on the map, and are instead just going to say, you know, I think we're going to be scaling pretty decently this game. We still have Aphelios, we still have Orianna. We don't need to take any even fights. So I do like this backing away from Immortals. But it is curious to watch the punch and counter punch.
And it does mean that the top laners are reverting towards that bottom side. Viper with a slight CS lead for himself because of that pressure that they created towards top. Now Dignitas, though, moving in to take this Herald as their consolation prize from that. Joey and Keith in position to contest. Gets the death sentence onto Jay, but again, Braum isn't too scared of that when he has Will and Spawn at his side. Going in with the Sonic Wave. Keith grabs the lantern, back under the turret. Jay flashing over into Tribush and throwing down the ground between them. Will is still in pursuit. Has to flash from the side of the jungler on IMT. No lives have been lost just yet, but a hefty chunk down onto both sides.
Herald is dropped. Both mid laners are already walking up. We're potentially looking at a dive. Again, punch and counter punch. There is a level 7 Will. Potentially looking for a dive, and Keith so low.
Oh, yeah, Keith just took a big chunk out of his HP right there and has to be careful, standing so strategically behind the minions, behind Joey as well. Will connects with the Q. Now outside of the turret range, comes in with the hop, a nice kick onto the support. Keith finally gets burned down. Dignitas get 2 in total.
Man, Will is just so good in this game. They still have Lorlo's ultimate, and they didn't even need it for this fight. He's taking a bit of an awkward trade here, but across the board, Dignitas are not only playing mechanically super well, but they're responding to the way that Immortals are going for some of these early plays, and they're playing them smart. They're not just going for this dive, because a lot of teams, a lot of less disciplined teams, would have just taken this Q. Will could have just jumped in, kicked Keith into the wall immediately, but instead they wait for Saligo to be here so that there's no chance of anything possibly going wrong. They're rewarded with 2 kills. They pick up another couple of plates, and just the way that Dignitas are waiting to make sure those 75% are actually 90 to 100% is beautiful, as they're already coming out to this early lead. And I expect that they should be ready to start fighting for these dragons coming up in a minute.
That perfect blend of the mechanics that Will has showcased that has made so many a fan of him in the start of his career, with that team synergy that they have been working on over the past few weeks throughout all of their matches, which is why they are seen as a top team despite having a bit of a fall off in Academy itself due to the detriment of the rosters and taking that time to adjust. And now Dignitas just showing so much confidence in their jungler and being able to follow up on those plays with a slight gold lead starting to extend for themselves here and a bounty onto the Lee Sin's forehead.
It is a large bounty, 600 gold if somebody is able to kill him, but it is going to be hard to actually try and contest this. They've already moved pretty up to the top side. Viper wants to go back and spend his money in order to finish out the Divine Sunderer sooner than later. They're still waiting for Anda to get his first item because he remains behind Will. As they get priority in basically every lane all at once for Dignitas, they should be easily able to walk into this dragon. We already touched on the fact that they're going to be a whole lot better whenever Immortals are forced to face check into them. And Immortals, remember, there's no rule in League of Legends that says you have to watch the other team do the objective. You can just go somewhere else and farm or back away for items, and Immortals are doing just that. They know they still can't fight. They're going to be seeding that, and it ties us up on dragons, but ultimately it gives Immortals time to scale.
Yep, a very respectable decision. So you can make use of that time instead of sitting around twiddling your thumbs, watching that dragon that you wish to claim for your own, go to somebody else. So yes, being proactive in other parts of the map, and it's something that they've set up for with the type of lanes, having someone like Viper who is so comfortable on split pushing on someone like Camille, but Soligo going ahead and pushing this wave up in this top side. So Dignitas, though, keeping their footing under them and feeling pretty good about what they've achieved thus far.
The one chink in the armor that they have right now is the fact that Viper is plus 30 CS in the bottom lane. He's only gotten assist, but he's also gotten some plate gold as well. So he has the item completion already ready to go up against Lorlo. And while the rest of the team is currently winning the 4v4, this Camille can become a serious issue later on in the game. We always know Viper likes playing to himself. He likes having these tools to be really aggressive, and sometimes he uses them to come fight, but other times we know he just stays in the side lane. Right now, he pushes forward, and as he starts to rotate, he can get to the fight first. Unfortunately, it's very easy for Lolo to follow him a little bit later on, so I'm expecting Immortals to really try and get a little bit more gold into Viper's pocket so that they can actually get serious sideline pressure a little bit later on. He's strong now, but he can be even stronger if they give him more tools.
And that much more of a threat when he has teleport available and can get to the fight from the other side. For Dignitas, I mean, Lorlo always have to worry about that double up between the TP and the Stand United. Soligo also bringing the TP for himself to maintain that threat from across the map. As we see, the majority of the rest of the teams are focused over here on that top side, into the red side jungle. Ooh. A fight over the buff as Will is the one to secure it. Even gets the Sonic onto Anda, but no reason to follow that up, as you're likely to find your death. He has to follow the lantern towards Joey because he sees the onslaught that Dignitas want to bring to them. They pressure this outside turret.
This is pretty standard as well. Like, the play coming in from Dignitas, you leave your AD carry in the mid lane. Oh, Joey!
Oh, Joey throws down the box to try to keep his protection. The Glacial Fissure from the enemy support. A final kill into the pocket of the Braum, but Anda now two locked down by Dignitas. They circle around to try to get Viper back here. Throws down the ultimatum to keep himself protected, but a Jinx is way too spicy, even on the outskirts of that wall. Dignitas securing another kill.
Everybody coming in here except for Keith. Once again, it just feels like Dignitas are a little bit faster to these plays, and because they're so strong, that sentence just misses. Will's so confident to actually go for this play, and I love the confidence coming through. They already have Shen coming in. They already have the situation where they are isolating individual members of Immortals, because Immortals didn't look like they were ready for this play, whereas Dignitas, somebody says go, everybody piles on, and even though you get a two-man shockwave, you get some big damage coming out of Pretty, he's not online just quite yet. So the confidence already coming through from Dignitas Academy, giving them big rewards. Will, again, this big playmaker for Dignitas, and if he can continue on this, should be an easy cruising to continuing to dominate this first game.
Will willing to make those calls to go in. JJ also, not just in this game so far, but throughout a lot of their previous series, has been so great at following up when he is roaming around, ready to immediately get that lockdown onto the enemy and take a lot of that damage in response. So it's what's allowing Dignitas to continue up this pressure and secure another Rift Herald here to drop down at some point in time.
Oh, I know a lot of people, Gabby, will spend a lot of time like talking about the mid-jungle synergy, right? It's always a very important set of two players that you need to have working together, but like you pointed out, JJ and Will, they just have this incredible trust of each other, and it allows them to go for plays that a lot of other teams can't. Oh, Lorlo doesn't realize that Anda's here?
Yeah, Lorlo holding a lot of trust in his heart as he falls right between two Immortals members. On the outskirts, the turret falls, but Lorlo getting chunked down once again. Lee Sin is here to follow him, but JJ, Spawn, and Soligo all on the outskirts around this pit. What a stun! What a blast of damage back. Dignitas try to follow up on this, and going to get the pursuit of Pretty so he can have some more safety. Spawns W just onto the side of Pretty's little pretty head. And that's going to be the end of that engage. A couple killed on both sides.
I feel like we're going back to what we were looking at earlier, where we were just praising Dignitas for their ability to take fights that weren't fair, where they had more members actually able to participate. But I want to point out a couple things. One, look at where Pretty is during this entire fight, and notice that he's not really participating in almost anything. But at the same time, because this fight is so split, it's temporarily a 4-on-2 for Immortals. That is not very fair whatsoever, and it becomes kind of fair a little bit later on, with all the health bars a little bit low. Dignitas are able to get a couple kills back, and hey, when you start getting Spawn on this Jinx to get those resets, it becomes a bit more dangerous. But this is another situation where the team that is better able to play with the geography and is able to split the other team is starting to come out ahead in these fights. Immortals did a great job in the first half. They blundered a little bit in the second half, and at the end of the day, Dignitas remains ahead. Going to be picking up their second Dragon of the game halfway towards the Mountain Soul.
While it wasn't the cleanest and perhaps Dignitas a bit split right there at the start, they can have some comfort in the fact that they did walk away with some trades for themselves to go ahead and stack this second Drake, and keeping it pretty tight within the game overall. They've had this slight lead for themselves that hasn't really changed much within recent times, as we've gotten these kind of skirmishes broken out in odd ways, and Spawn now able to just assert this pressure onto the bot turret to clean that out a bit before joining the rest of the team. Ooh. Oh no, Soligo finds himself into the crosshairs of Viper. Keith and Joey are there for a bit of support, but it is quite the kill in favor of Immortals.
I was going to spend time talking about how, you know, very clearly we're getting like this yin-yang arms race where one side's focusing top lane, the other side's focusing bottom, and then Viper's like, you know, I could just kill this dude. And he does that, right? He just goes in, and suddenly the even trade that we were looking at, top lane for bottom lane, is suddenly upset by the fact that Viper is just able to make this play. Camille is already online, going to be two-shotting a lot of these members, and at the same time, it also means that the best person on Immortals right now is going to be picking up this big wave that Spawn had just crashed in the bottom side, because Lorlo is the only person alive to come pick this up on the right side of the map. You're going to get a little gold on your shed. Great. On the other hand, Viper picking up a kill and also picking up 2-3 stacked waves underneath the bottom lane turret just suddenly means that Viper, he's already a problem. It's going to become a bigger problem, and Lorlo, who we said might be a bit of a target point for Immortals, is going to be even more vulnerable going forward.
Viper is not exactly who you want to see getting that gold under him. And I mean, targeting someone like Soligo, who even though he's got 3 deaths, a lot of times they come after entering those fights, getting a stun down to enable the rest of the team to ensure these trades. And if he's taken out early in one of these next skirmishes, it can be pretty detrimental for Dignitas. But the timing on that one, they're able to recover a bit, keep him kind of over on the farming side so he can continue to scale up as well, because we've got a couple champions on both sides that are waiting for that scaling territory. But Immortals are the ones pressuring onto this bot side continuously, having 4 of their members already clustered here.
We are seeing right now that Immortals are doing a decent job of making sure that there's no waves that are going to be impacting their turrets while they're looking for this play on the bottom side. You see, Pretty goes up, clears out the mid lane, and even though Soligo was pushing his top lane earlier, it will only just barely impact the turret. By the time that Pretty is able to get up there, we'll be able to clear out all of that. And so Immortals, they look for something, they don't quite find anything, but they're also not going to be losing anything out on the play. So I really like the proactivity. Unfortunately, they're a bit too far behind to try and defend this, but there might be an opportunity because Pretty's in the wings.
This is an even up of the turret score between Dig and Immortals here, and breaking open mid always offers you a bit more flexibility and when you can roam over on the blue side here. So now a little time to reset. We've actually got quite a bit of time before some of the major timers. 2 minutes until the Drake. Yes, Baron is going to spawn up soon, but it really just signals it's time to go start warding that and catching any of the rotations of the enemy here. But as we are at the 20-minute mark here, Joshi, and we haven't seen as much change in terms of leads, which do you think is feeling more secure in trying to make plays right now, and which one do you think needs to kind of sit back and wait for the action to happen?
I still feel like Dignitas are the ones in the driver's seat right now. They will be pretty happy with their ability to just scale up with this Jinx as time goes on, as we do get to see, our observer feed does come back, but they should be very happy with the fact that their Jinx is scaling up, Lee Sin is very strong, and we are seeing them, they're the first ones towards the top side, they're going to be clearing out the vision and potentially looking for opportunities for Lee Sin to try and find jumps onto people.
See if they can find their opening here, because Anda's trying to clear out this ward. The Winter's Bite lands on him for the slow. Will hops through. The kick back onto the jungler, and Spawn should just get a couple more autos to secure that kill. Dignitas taking down the enemy jungler.
All right, as we get back into our cinematic view, we're seeing that they're going to be warding themselves with starting the Baron, right? They have a ton of pressure all over the map. Immortals need to try and find some way into this pick. You can't afford to give this over right now, and it starts by finding JJ.
Oh, Joey and the team going on to JJ, who just wanted to create that distance. Viper using the Hextech ultimatum there, while Pretty gets chunked down in the bat line. Soligo coming out of stasis also gets a chunk onto himself, but the stun onto the enemy AD carry. He's taken out of the equation. The mid laner is also on the retreat. Will shouldn't even need to try to secure the kill, because it's Dignitas that comes out on top in the fight.
And is still dead. There's an opportunity here, but Dignitas want to go back and spend all of their money, and it's fascinating to watch how quickly they are willing to go for these fights. It looks like a call. It's like, hey, we're not looking to burn this. We're looking to turn off it. We still can look to play for the Dragons. And Lorlo, already down in the bottom lane, looks to be signaling just that. Every single member of Dignitas is going to be coming down to this Mountain Dragon. They still want to play for Soul. And this says to me, they're still very happy with the fact that the game can continue to go later and later. They have a Jinx in their back pocket. They're 5-1. Lee Sin is super strong. He's able to stand up in the front line. And as they start to take control of these chokes, they're here first and needs to get out of dodge.
And not a lot of ultimates up just yet for either of these teams. The junglers have them available, Smite at the ready, but really just trying to position here onto the outskirts of the Dragon. It's already been started up by Dignitas. There's Joey throwing out the death sentence, but it's the Braum that's caught. Pillar thrown behind him to create that cluster. But the Dragon's now over pulling towards the IMT side. Everyone just wants to have a little bit of patience for the next hook to come off of cooldown. This time on to Lorlo. Glacial Fissure thrown down, so just enough for Dignitas to be able to allow Will to secure this and put them on soul point. No lives have to be lost, just a dragon.
Actual zoning ultimate. I really like it coming through from JJ. Just willing to create a little bit of space. As you said, there's not a lot of ultimates. You don't really want to take this fight because of how coin flippy it can be. Shen, not the greatest team fighter when he's there to start the actual fight. And because they do this, they also have the inside track towards the mid lane. We'll see if they're able to get this entire turret as Immortals looks to respond. Viper looking for a flank.
Good timing on that wave, but the physical pressure that IMT have just by locating themselves in the lane, basically, and saying, Dignitas, if you stay, you risk overstaying at this point. So Dig moving as a unit to get out of harm's way and should be able to back, still feeling pretty good about the objective they were able to secure.
Are going to be backing away. 4 minutes left on the Mountain Soul, and this is one of the dangers that some teams can run into. If you back everybody at the same time, it can potentially give the other team an opportunity to do Baron, but Immortals, they're giving Dignitas enough credit. They're not just going to be starting it. They expect that Dignitas won't be making that mistake, and look at the cycling of backs, right? You get Spawn backing first, then Soligo backs, and only now you're recalling JJ. You can never have fewer than 4 people out on the map, and they're doing a great job making sure that there's no window for Immortals to easily go for this Baron. It's a very small thing, but I have to praise Dignitas for it.
It's called leaving someone to make that face at them. If they start up, you just need someone to do it until everyone can get back to be a full force threat. And as you noted, executed very well for Dig, which just again shows that team dynamic that has developed over time to not give anything up for free, basically, and maintain the control that they have fought for over the map. And just standing on the side with a control ward in this bush, though, decides to step forward, throws down the pillar.
Teleports
From
instantly.
Dignitas coming over on the opposite side. Glacial Fissure throws down, gets some sort of a knockup, but he is the one that's targeted by Will. Gets the kick onto the opposite. Viper goes in deep into the backline. Lorlo is still in pursuit. Goes ahead and taunts him. Hextech ultimatum thrown on and down. Anda falls and disengaged. Dignitas take down a second one in Viper. Team fight successful and Baron in their sights.
Lorlo's going to have to back, so there's still 3 members of Immortals. It's not impossible for them to try and get this fight, but they're not going to be in a position where they are super happy to do it. Pretty is just now coming in. The Baron is already kind of low. This is such a tough spot to walk into Fog of War.
A lot of poke onto Joey, so he has a harder time stepping up here. And Lorlo, no TP, no stand united, has to stay here just to offer that additional body to the team. Ward's still on down. IMT not feeling good about trying to step up to this one. So a couple more hits and Dignitas get Baron Nashor.
All right, again, beautiful stuff coming through from Dignitas. We said that there was a small criticism of them not having a ton of say over when the fights were actually starting. You saw Will having a bit of trouble actually looking for a kick onto Keith. He was able to get out, but this is the thing. Immortals, very difficult time actually getting these fights started when the tank line is presented from Dignitas. And we saw Viper currently without a dive buddy, currently isn't able to go in by themselves super effectively, and Dignitas able to punish that over and over. They're creating space for themselves. They're forcing people to check into the fog of war. And while Dignitas, they're not dominating this game super heavily, there hasn't really been a point where it feels like they're behind. They're just doing all the right moves over and over. And Will, not even going to waste time, going to be starting the wolves like right on spawn. They have their timers down, Gabby. This is some great League of Legends that Dignitas are playing.
Yeah, if you're looking at who you need to be on Immortal's side for who's going to make those plays happen, we are seeing the good things, like you're saying. Death sentences coming out from Joey, but Lorlo and JJ will happily eat those hooks. Right now, Immortals want to go for the setup across two different bushes to see if they can get the collapse. They had it previously warded, but with not a sound made by the red side team, Dignitas smells something fishy in the water and they push forward. They do have that Baron buff after all, so you have to be very careful when getting in a scuffle with them.
This is great coming out from Dignitas. They're making sure that they have priority in the mid lane, they have priority in the bottom lane, so as they try and create some space for themselves and actually get these waves pushing, they're also going to be creating a lot of force over all these choke points. And as they move really deep, it's important to note that Dignitas, they would like the Mountain Soul, but they actually don't need it. They could just force Immortals to react to them. They're already pushing through. There's still 30 seconds left before the dragon comes, and Lorlo, it's going to take a long time to die.
That's exactly what they're doing. Lorlo, he's targeted over here in the mid lane, but he still has the turret. He had the stasis. He flashes out. Viper's going pretty darn deep for this one. If you see the rest of Dignitas, they've taken down the inhibitor turret. They've taken down the inhibitor right about now, throwing out the rocket just to land to make sure that the backs are as delayed as possible. And it was a successful land indeed. One Nexus turret goes down. Dignitas will keep their sights onto the second. Immortals have officially arrived. Lorlo isn't even here yet and can be as soon as he's needed. But Immortals, what do they have in their pocket to try to offset this onslaught? JJ standing by Will. The pressure's coming in. That wave is big. Glacial Fisher gets the knock up onto Viper. He has to zip over to the backline where Keith is, but they're targeting the turret itself. Viper in stasis. Will he fall? A heavy hit from the Moonlight Sigil isn't going to be enough. Lorlo is here for the play. Dignitas takes down one. They take down two. They target Keith. Joey flashes over towards spawn, but he just finds his own demise. Will, the final one to rise above the rest with the team. The Nexus is the target, and Dignitas Academy coming out strong here in game number 1, taking down Immortals. That's just the start of this series, folks. We're going to kick it to a break, and when we return, we've got the Proving Grounds coverage for you. See you then.